Welcome to Salento with Love. I'm Davide Mengoli, and what a better way of starting a video with the bells. Now, today I'm going to take you through the history of an amazing town, and we're just about to explore one of the most amazing towns here in Salento. How many times have I told you that Salento is dotted with beautiful towns with an incredible history? Now, sometimes when we choose a destination, a location to explore around the world, it's a couple of things that help us to make that decision. And one of them could be the history of a place, or the other one, the natural beauties that the area that we choose to explore have. In this particular case, we have both, because the proximity to the sea allows us to have some of the best coastlines here in the peninsula of Salento. But also the history of this town allows us to explore and to find little gems. Now, just the name in itself, before we actually dive inside the town, Casarano. And it's interesting because it comes from the Roman, and historians, they're all in agreement that maybe a man called Caesar, a general, was given so much land as a result of winning a battle, and so he was in charge of this area, and the name of the town comes from this general, this Roman general. Well, that tells us immediately that the history of this town goes back to more than 2,000 years ago. So are you ready? Well, before we start, what a better way of starting the journey with a nice Italian coffee. Amazing. Let's go. What better way of starting the tour of a city, starting with a church. Italy's full of churches, but each town has got the main church, also called Chiesa Matrice, or the mother of churches, the one that contains the patron of the city. In this particular case, it's this one. So let's go in and explore. The altars were actually taken from a church in Lecce and positioned here. True Baroque architecture. Can you see how much work is gone into the stone? Look how intrinsic it's carved. And this is really the explosion of the Baroque architecture in the 6th and 7th century. And a true witness here. This church was constructed on a Roman ground in the 6th century. So amazing to see. And look at this painting. 17th century, Oronzo Tiso, representing the 3 Jewish boys that got thrown into the furnace. You know, do you know anything about the Bible? Well, that's an interesting story. They were accused, and the Babylon king, I can't remember, I think Nebuchadnezzar, I think it was his name, unfortunately had to listen to the people that were accusing these 3 Jewish, and they were thrown inside the furnace just to see the angels bringing them out. Isn't it amazing, this background? Also, it's amazing to see paintings of representations of this magnitude in a church, in a town in Salento. Isn't that a good reason to come and explore? I've always been fascinated by this building. 52 pillars. Isn't that amazing? Built in the 17th century for a very powerful and very well-known duke, the D'Aquino family. And that was supposed to be a very impressive 52 pillars holding an incredible balcony. Look at this facade. It was never finished. Why? We don't really know. The courtyard is open. Should we go in? You can imagine the horse and carts coming in here, opening the doors. the horses were actually hooked onto this. Look at the amazing construction. And then you come across these cappelle votive. Can you think? 300-400 years. And just like any ancient town in Italy has the centro storico, the historic center. The historic center of Casarano is very, very rich. Now, how big is Casarano? We didn't mention this. Over 19,000 people. So it's actually one of the largest towns of the 97 towns that you can find across the peninsula. I think we've been spotted. I find it amazing how Italy's been going through a refurbishment probably for the last few hundred years, because being an ancient country with the Romans and before that the Greeks and all these different influences, now we've been trying over the last few centuries trying to save our past. What do we have here? I'm going solo because Ludovica didn't want to transpass, but how can I miss this? I just find it incredible to see how history that goes back hundreds of years is just getting lost. And obviously the effort is there to try to save it, but sometimes it just can't be saved. I find it so amazing in these towns when the new constructions built in the 60s and 70s came in and they were almost squeezing out the old and extraordinary architecture. But today, it's all coming back again. The different styles going from the Greek and the Byzantine, which they had more than 300 years worth of history here, and then the Baroque that came through with the Spanish, and then even later with the Normans. And really, when you come across buildings like this, you can see those transitions. And now decorating a square, can you imagine being here, have a coffee there in that beautiful bar? Should we continue that way? It just goes on forever. But then you turn around the corner and you have Palazzo de Donatis. Look, another palazzo that is looking to be brought back to life. Now this shows how wealthy a town like Casarano was. It went through so many changes, but nevertheless, it was so wealthy. Now, if I think of today, what is the wealth of Casarano? Because a lot of time people think, oh, south of Italy is probably one of those little poor areas of Italy. Not in this case when it comes to Puglia, when it comes to Salento in particular. And these are really very much old money. But the transformation in today, the textile industry in Casarano, it's a industry that is worth hundreds of millions of euros. Did you know that all the major brands from around the world, not Italian brands only, but from around the world, they use the textile facilities found here in Salento. And Casarano has an incredible history when it comes to these large companies in the textile industry. So that's where the wealth is today. But back in them days when these constructions were coming up, it was the richness coming from the ground, from the agricultural background that Salento has. Let's explore some more. Guarda che bella. Wow. Yeah, they've just suggested Vacanze Romane to me. Yes, have you seen Roman Holiday? All you need is a Vespa in Italy. You don't need anything else. Also, wonderful restaurants. When you live in a town like this, you want to make sure as well that you have restaurants, supermarkets, bars, and living the dolce vita. Well, here you don't just have amazing restaurants, but you have settings which are second to none. Look at the architecture as I look around. Look at this balcony. Bellissimo lo stemma, sembra Babbo Natale con le renne. I feel like being in an open-air museum when I walk in these towns. You know, you travel around the world to some very special destinations to look at the history and the connection with our present day. And then in Salento, you're walking, and if you really are receptive to the history, you just come across amazing things. Well, we're definitely in an old settlement. When you find clay tiles like this particular building, then you know that you're looking, and even the shape. Now everybody think flat roofs, but flat roofs were only introduced here in the 18th century. Before that, this is a classic roof. So we are looking at a roof there that is at least 200 years old or more. And those tiles, they're all been baked one by one, creating these wonderful roofs. And you know me, I just can't resist. There is an abandoned building I need to go in. I know that we are about Casarano, but we're about doing a little detour. Look at these cementina floors. In this room, we have a different type. And look at this furniture, it's been left in here abandoned. But I just find it amazing. Look at the architecture, so special. And these elements that have just stopped. I wonder what's down here. And it's incredible. I believe it's a very early oil mill dug into the rock.
Questo è un frantoio ipogeo, cioè è costruito, cioè scavato sottoterra. L'olio era quello che era, quindi era, diciamo, un materiale molto costoso. E sotto queste diciamo, ipogei si creava un microclima proprio adatto a far sì che l'olio, essendo, diciamo, no, si staccava dall'acqua di lavorazione. Questo frantoio presumibilmente, non sappiamo, date non è che ce ne sono certe, però si suppone che intorno all'anno 1000 naturalmente si estraeva olio lampante. Poi all'inizio del Settecento si sono scoperte altre, diciamo, modi di lavorazione, che era la cosiddetta pressa alla genovese, che sono queste che adesso vedete qua, queste colonnate, vedete qua, ogni colonna, ogni anfratto di qua c'era una pressa. L'olio naturalmente è diventato ulteriormente, diciamo, migliore e quindi no, era più commerciabile. Da novembre fino a marzo, essendo il sole più basso, da quella finestra fatta proprio ad hoc, infatti è tipica, obliquamente tagliata. Da quell'apertura noi d'inverno abbiamo il sole che arriva addirittura sotto la pila in fondo lì. Questi sono i contenitori dove venivano poi, di là, una volta schiacciata la cosa, veniva tutta olio e sentina. Siccome si prendeva a mano con un recipiente chiamato nappo, e allora si prendeva la parte superiore. Poi quando magari il braccio non arrivava più, no? Perché magari ce n'era ancora olio, però allora avevano fatto questo tipo di ingegno. Allora qua c'è un foro passante che l'altra estremità sta giù, quindi mettevano dell'acqua qua dentro, salire il livello e quindi riuscivano quasi completamente a estrarre l'olio dal recipiente lì.
also in this amazing square with this beautiful monument that was inaugurated in 1929 by an artist in Parma, Renato Brozzi. This beautiful sculpture really for the heroic gestures of the Italian soldiers during the First World War. But also this area, it's got a little bit of a history, because during the Second World War, because of these old cannons that are here where the monument was since 1929, a British pilot thought that this was actually an army base. So he decided to drop a bomb. And on that 10th of August in 1943, 6 people died. So even more so, this sculpture represents something very, very powerful for the people of Casarano. A little wing that is also missing, nothing to do with the bomb, but probably already the artist Brozzi was already thinking about a tragedy that was going to happen here in Casarano. What an amazing story. Well, we are now embedded in nature. We're at 160 meters above sea level. Woohoo! That's really high in Puglia, or in Salento, I should say, because it's flat. But we are at the highest point, and we are seeing the beautiful and vast area of the town of Casarano that we've just explored. Also in the background, you can see how beautiful the sea is. The little town that we look right at the back of that white town, that's Gallipoli. From the top here, we can actually see all the beautiful towns dotted around. To my left, the church, or the Santuario della Campana. That's interesting. What a beautiful way of ending this excursion through this beautiful city of Casarano. I would say one of the most rich in history and in size in the province of Lecce. Now, where does this Santuario takes the name? Well, apparently, maybe a legend, but there is always an element of truth in every legend. So there was a farmer here, and his servant would take the bulls up here onto the hills, and one of them disappeared, and he went looking for one, and when he found it, he just saw him there on his knees, the bull with his horns. He was actually digging the ground, and while he was digging the ground, he could hear a bell. He got scared, and he actually ran back to his master, telling him what he actually saw up here on the top of the hill, and the master didn't believe him. So the master wanted to see it for himself. So he went there, and he still found the bull there digging. So the next day he decided to get his men up onto the hill and to dig, and that's where he found this stone with a sculpture of Madonna and a child. Well, he decided to create a little chapel up here, and every night to light up a little candle. But the story doesn't end there. One night, because the sea is just there was a sailor, and the sea was really rough, and he looked into the distance and he saw a little light. He saw land. So he pointed his ship and he actually touched the ground, and then he started to walk and walk. And then he got here to the top of the hill to found the sanctuary of the Madonna of the Bell, or de la Campana. And that's where he decided to build a church. Well, what can we say? We've had a fantastic time exploring Casarano. Beautiful churches, amazing borgo with all those little streets, but also a town rich, full of restaurants, bars, a fantastic quality of life, nightlife, and the proximity to the sea and all these other villages makes of Casarano an amazing place to explore. So if you are visiting Salento, if you have Salento on your map or on your radar, make sure you put Casarano on your radar and explore it. Who knows, you may become a citizen of Casarano. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Follow the channel and press the little bell. And until the next video, make sure you stay safe wherever you are.